It's time to rev your digital motorbikes for in this Roll for Crit review, we're going to dive into the world of Reality Shift. In this game, you play as virtual reality racers, trying to make it to the end of an ever-shifting changing course. Be careful how the course changes its tracks and moves, as it could crush you. So let's see how this game makes it to the finish line in this review. Before we continue really quick, I am looking at the deluxe version of Reality Shift. It includes some extra little expansions that the regular version does not have. For now, what you really need to know is that the board is included with the deluxe version, but everything else you will see is in the regular version. I'll have a separate mark, there'll be a timestamp down below, of where I quickly go over all the extra deluxe components. Your goal in this game is to be the first racer to reach the finish point right there. Seems simple enough, but as I explain the turn structure, you'll see it's a little bit harder as simply just moving forward. On your turn, you will roll the speed die. Sometime during your turn, you're going to have to move that distance exactly. However, you don't need to do it right away, and I'll explain why you probably will not want to. You're also going to have a hand of these action cards. They will show a color, as well as a cube being altered in some way, and a number on top. Before you move your speed die, you can choose to do that first. You have the option to use your cards for two different kinds of actions. The first one is quite simple. Discarding your card for its boost value. So if I were to discard this card, I get to move an extra 4 in addition to what I rolled on the speed die. Keep in mind though, if you ever run into a space with another player, or if you were to hit a dead end, your vehicle explodes. But at the start of your turn, you will respawn back at the start or a checkpoint. You can also use the card discarded instead of moving 4 to U-turn and turn 180 degrees. That is the only way that you can change the direction really, outside of being at a split where you are allowed to turn left, right, or straight in this case, but once you make that turn, you have to keep moving in that direction. Earlier I mentioned checkpoints, and those are these numbered spaces here. If at any time you pass over or stop at one of those points, you may choose to take a checkpoint card if you do not already have one. If no one else has taken it, you can take that card, and from now on, when you die, you can spawn there instead of all the way at the start. Now, there's one other thing you can do with those cards, and that goes back to the pictures of the cubes being manipulated. Right now, it looks like yellow's pretty close to winning, and that's where we can have fun with these cards. Now, if a card matches the color of the top of the cube or is white, white can affect anything, you may alter the cube in the way the picture is shown. That can become really helpful as it could open more possibilities, or, if we want to be mean, crush a player. That is another way a player can be destroyed. Keep in mind though that if a player is on top of a cube matching their color, you cannot mess with that cube as long as they're on top of it. You can, however, still roll other cubes on top of that one, crushing them. Once you discard your card to refill your hand, and gameplay will pass on to the next player. Keep in mind, as the game progresses, the board will drastically shift around, changing what is face up, where cubes are, what is going on, and that is where, if you may have noticed that they seem to be a little bit clicky, the magnets come in. You actually can drive along the sides of the boards. This is a great way for you to maybe sneak around in order to get around and maybe make your way to the finish line. Now let's quickly talk about what's included in the deluxe version. First, let's go over to the thing that's already on there, the board. This is a nice little board that lets you know exactly where a cube should go and if it moves or rotates, as well as being double-sided. This side being the more special side where there are portals that allow you, if you drive off the board onto these roads, you can use to go to other areas, and if cubes eventually move around to connect to them, you can drive onto them. There is a power-up deck, which includes special cards. At any point you go to a checkpoint, whether it's been taken or not, you may choose to get a power-up card instead. These will be hidden until you choose to activate them, and some, while can be triggered during your turn, others can be triggered during your opponent's turn, allowing you to really change up the pace of the game and maybe throw someone off balance. There is an extra white racer with their own special rules because white tends to appear more often on top than the other colors. There are some extra cubes, each with their own special rules and how they work. Then there are these tokens used for two different modes. One mode, you simply turn them on their face down side like that, where pretty much you're playing a battle mode and they represent lives. The other, it has numbers matching the checkpoints, and instead of reaching the finish point, your goal is to hit a certain number of checkpoints based on player count and collect these tokens. So if I hit the 7 checkpoint, I can collect the 7 token, the 5, and the 1, making it more of a race of hitting all the different points rather than everyone just trying to reach that one finish line. So as you can see from the overhead, this is basically just get from point A to point B, your basic style racing game. However, unlike many of the others that I've played where sometimes it can get a little bit boring, the shifting track, the magnetism, and the way that you are choosing how it's altered really adds an extra flair and fun to it. It is often really silly and hilarious when you move the track in a way someone doesn't expect, or if someone's like, you don't have a way to crush me, do you? And of course you do, and you crush them. Now, you can get crushed. It's very easy for you to accidentally run into someone. You will die a lot. However, unlike other games when there is player elimination, because you can just start over again, it doesn't feel that bad. And if anything, that's sort of some of the fun is killing each other or even yourself and just laughing at the silliness that's going to occur. And also what the new course is going to look like, because odds are they did it by moving a cube, which means now you have either a tower in the center or it's just very different from what it was just a few turns ago. And of course, if that's an issue, the checkpoints add an extra little bit of flair, as if, let's say you get the number 6 checkpoint, you're going to want to start manipulating the cube that has that checkpoint to be much closer to the finish line. So if someone does kill you, you are still within finishing distance, depending on the cards in hand and what you roll for the speed die. Of course, the speed die, making sure that you're constantly moving too. Always make sure that slow and steady and maybe making sure you don't hit anyone doesn't really work here. You're supposed to crash into things. You're supposed to die. Everything is supposed to be crazy. The one big issue I will say that has with the base rules is that, especially with the lower player counts, not too much with the higher one because there's enough chaos going on, but there could be those moments where it pretty much just becomes, can you stop me? Great, I win on my turn kind of deal. That usually, like I said, it's only usually at the lower player count if someone doesn't have the right cube manipulation because of the colors or depending on where your guy is, they just can't technically be crushed. But when it comes to the higher 4-player count, usually at that point, everyone sort of doesn't realize unless it's really obvious. And usually someone might be like, oh, I'm accidentally covered up this thing. Oh, I gave you a path to the finish kind of deal. So it's not as big of an issue, but the kind of thing that can be a bit of a letdown because usually in any kind of race, regardless of how it's going, you want that sort of neck and neck, not sure what's going to happen till the very last second. And luckily, that's where the deluxe stuff comes in. It fixes a lot of these issues. First off, there are the power-ups. Once I play with them, I pretty much always want to use them. They allow you to do more weird shenanigans and more importantly, on your opponent's turn. So those times when you're not so sure or you're like, all right, is anyone going to manipulate cubes? They might not do anything, but on your turn, when you start your turn, that's when they mess with you. So there is a lot more uncertainty when it comes to if you're going to make it to the finish line. And of course, getting your own power-ups to trick people where they think you're not within spitting distance, but you are, makes things a bit more exciting. The board, I should point out, probably not needed by most people. It's like the most technically aesthetic thing. It does have rules where has its own roads to drive on. I sort of like it just because the cubes do connect, but just having to see like, oh, they'll rotate there or something. It was a nice little thing. I know it's a silly thing, but it's like, it's my favorite because of aesthetics, not mechanics, where the power-ups are really a strong mechanical feeling. Of course, the other things that the game adds from the deluxe version as expansions as well. Fifth Razor is probably my least favorite, mostly because it adds its own special rules and for everyone else. So it's like, who wants to make a more complicated game? I'd rather just stick with the 4 racers, whether you're going to the lower or higher player counts, and throw in the other expansions. The unique cubes that have their own cool rules. Depends what's going on. Sometimes it could be cool. Sometimes they just feel a little boring. So that one's a bit more up in the air depending on your choices. But the alternate battle modes, and in particular the tokens, that's the other thing. If you do feel like it's a little boring racing to the one finish line, making it so you need the number of checkpoints makes it much more, I don't want to say aggressive, but it's harder to keep track of 7 different spots rather than just the one finish cube. You have to remember which ones people have already captured, and you're like, oh no, he's already captured that one because he can't go through number 7 again. Oh, I forgot about 4s right there. So once again, the deluxe version fixes a lot of the bigger problems that appear in the normal mode. The normal mode is still really fun, and I enjoy it, and it definitely fixes that part of my brain who likes seeing different 3D objects and moving things around. But I feel from a mechanical standpoint, the deluxe one does feel like, honestly, if this was its own little expansion review, I would probably consider a must buy because, like I said, the power-up cards alone and the board as well, I pretty much will always play with those two components regardless. Crits and misses for Reality Shift. Crits. This game will keep you on your toes because unlike other racing games, the track will never stay the same. The board will constantly change with the cubes rotating on top of each other or around the board, and thanks to the cards, this won't be because of an event deck, rather it will be the players choosing how the course changes. This means when your turn comes up again, the board can be completely different, which will keep you engaged and trying to find out how not only your opponents are trying to stop you, but how maybe you can move the board around to your advantage. There are many ways to die in this game, but luckily that isn't too big of an issue. In fact, because of the respawn at the start, or if you get some of the checkpoints, it actually rewards you for playing a bit more aggressively. In particular, if you're able to get some of the checkpoints, you are now encouraged to try to manipulate the cube that checkpoint is on to try and move it as close to the finish as possible, making it much more threatening to actually kill you rather than just try to alter your path. The expansions included in the deluxe version are extremely helpful and honestly fix some of the misses I'll talk about a little bit later. There are so many different ways to change up your game that honestly, if this was just for an expansion review, this would be included as a must buy. As a quick note, if you do get the regular version, the deluxe one includes how you can combine the two sets, meaning you don't have to feel guilty for rebuying the game all over again if they only ever include these expansions in the deluxe one in the future. Misses. One of the biggest problems in racing games is that the final turns can feel a little anticlimactic, and that can still happen here. If someone gets close to the finish line and asks if anyone has a way to stop them, and if they don't, you pretty much just have a round where everyone just waits until the player closest can finish the game. This is mitigated a little bit if you play at the max player count as things get a little chaotic, or if you throw in some of the expansion pieces which make things a little bit more unpredictable or maybe change up how the game ends. While I mostly enjoyed the deluxe expansions, the 5th Racer one was not one I liked too much. It added its own unique rules, which to me in the end just made it a bit more complicated specifically for that person or anyone trying to interact with that person, and not really worth adding that one extra player. Some quick explanation, as I did mention the crits miss, but I admit I actually forgot to put it in the beginning, but thought this might be as good as a place that I need to talk about. If you do buy the regular one and want to later get the deluxe one, and maybe they sell them separately, but as far as I know, these expansions will only be in a deluxe version of the game. You will actually sort of be rewarded as the deluxe version comes with like a rule print here. You can see where it shows you how to make special race tracks based on weird shapes. And some of them, not all of them, actually require more than one core set. So you're rewarded for having more than the base 9 cubes that come in the regular version of the game. So that is a great way for you to get everything and at least get a bit more reward in not having just double components on everything. It's up to you and your thoughts on that, but I think that's pretty good. Maybe there's a way you can piecemeal so you can just get the ones I mentioned, like the power-up expansion, but at the very least, you got something to do with those extra components. Now, the game itself, it's pretty fun. Yes, it's still a racing game, and it can have those moments that I think come in almost any racing board game when there's a race to, even not like if it's a literal race or like first to level 10, first to hit this point, and it's just simply just, can anyone stop me? And everyone just goes, nope, nope, nope. And then like, whatever, I won. But if you get some of those other components, and that usually is the way you fix it in other games, making it so no one is ever really sure if someone has that hidden little thing that can activate on their turn or someone else's that could trip things up. That's the kind of thing that will make sure that you stay engaged in the game outside of the usual hilarity and shenanigans that are going to come from the board shifting and rotating and all the crazy cubes. Let me know your thoughts on this if you've had the chance to play this one, whether it's just the normal one or the deluxe version. Do you feel that you're perfectly happy with the regular one? Or do you think you need some of those extra little expansions to help spice up the game? You can let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much. If you do leave a comment, and of course, the like, share, subscribe, it's always grateful and important. And to all my rollers on Patreon, keep on racing forward. You're helping me so much as I, unfortunately, am a bit of the slow turtle in this race. But for now, that's all I have to say about Reality Shift. Let me know your thoughts and see you next time in the next Roll for Crit review.